however,
but Jesus' message is very clear. He never said to stone anyone to death.
He has no right to interpret the Sharia sitting on this show here, and I just want to make that very clear, that this is an example of an extreme fringe that described the 9/11 bombers as the Magnificent 19. He used to head a group that's now been prescribed under terrorism legislation.
Who support the American government and the British government.
He should not be here talking. I'd like to remind Douglas as well, the author of Neoconservatism, Why We Need It, that it was Bush who said, you're with us or against us, and not God. And that's an important point.
But Mr. Bush did not say so on behalf of God.
And you're a former radical yourself.
Because he launched it in the name of God. So
and you are a former radical yourself, but
I've never been to prison for it.
Douglas Murray is in top form once again and needs no introduction from us. Since you're probably wondering what he's talking about, that's none other than the Islamic religion and its quest to bring the Sharia law into power. Not just that, but to answer a question. Is Islam intolerant? Just keep watching. But for now, let's hear from Douglas.
And most Muslims, both in Britain and across the world, are law-abiding, decent people for whom their faith is an important part of their lives.
And then, Douglas hammers home some bitter truth.
However, there is an awkward thing about Islam, which is that Islam's religion, its founder, was a more violent man than, for instance, the founder of Christianity. I'd give you an example. I mean, if Christ, I'm not a Christian, but I have no truck in this thing, but if Christ had been a warrior, had killed people he captured, Christianity's history would be even more violent than it has been. I'd give you one other example. When a woman is brought in adultery to Jesus, he says, he who's without sin casts the first stone. When Muhammad has a woman brought in, he orders her to be stoned. This would be a very different outcome. Now, fortunately, as I say, there's no doubt about this, about the nature of Muhammad as a beginner of a religion. There's no doubt about that, but there is also no doubt about the fact, as I say, that most Muslims don't behave in that way.
Let's be honest. Muhammad's violent actions do make us question the roots of Islam. We know many Muslims today are peaceful and law-abiding, but we can't just brush aside the fact that the founder of Islam itself engaged in violent acts. To grasp Islam's complexities and potential issues, we must acknowledge its history. Understanding these aspects allows for a nuanced discussion of the religion. By recognizing its foundations, we can engage in more informed conversations about Islam. It's about seeing the full picture, not casting blame. At this point, the debate gets heated. Maajid Nawaz cut Douglas Murray short and had some counterpoints.
Untrue. It's untrue. You've deliberately picked on one example, and that is Jesus Christ, the prophet of God. Before that, there were many other prophets that Christians also believe in, such as the prophets of the Old Testament, who launched wars, who were kings, King Solomon, King David. Hold on, Douglas, I'm making a point here, which is that prophets during those times, some of them fought, some of them didn't fight, some of them it's disputed whether they fought. The point is that all religions are interpreted. We can't say here that Islam is one thing or another.
But Jesus' message is very clear. He never said to stone anyone to death, Jesus, did he?
I think it's disputed, even the fact that the Prophet Muhammad stoned people to death. That's not a fact. That's not a fact.
This is utterly wrong. The facts are not linked. You all remember the story of Ka'b ibn al-Ashraf. Ka'b ibn al-Ashraf, a Jewish poet, satirized Muhammad and his followers after the Battle of Badr, inciting against the Muslim community. Muhammad, viewing this as hate speech and a threat, ordered his assassination by Muhammad bin Maslama to protect the community. This incident shows how the early Muslim community, facing existential threats, sometimes took severe measures for survival, highlighting the complex dynamics between freedom of speech, incitement, and community protection in early Islamic history. This was a harmless threat. They were even in writings, so dealing with him, he mobilized his followers. That is some common socialization there. But before we get to the root of this debate, Maajid Nawaz again counters an acclaimed radical Muslim at the onset of this debate. We will get to what this radical religious Muslim said that sparked this argument.
I'd just like to say something here, that aside from his terrible Arabic, all religions are what their followers make them. And that depends upon the vast majority of the followers of a faith, whether it's Christianity, Islam or Judaism. No one religion should be singled out to say that this particular religion is intolerant. In the medieval period, Pope Urban II launched the Crusades in the name of God. And today we have people like Anjum speaking the way he just did. I think the difference is that the problem today happens to be that many Muslims have subscribed to something we call Islamism, whereby they believe Islam is a political ideology that must be forced upon people in their preference is at the end of a sword.
This gets more interesting when the moderator asks this question.
Is he a real Muslim? Is he a real Muslim?
But what is the contention here so far? Let's go back to the root of this debate.
Islamism has become a growing concern in Britain. We've all become more used to the sight of women veiled from head to foot, radicals holding placards saying things like, behead those who criticise Islam. Surveys suggest that 37% of young British Muslims want Sharia law in this country. Many people are now asking, is Islam just an intolerant religion? You're an ex-Muslim.
Let's see what she has to say.
I'm an atheist now, but I think this question is wrong, and this is exactly the reason why. The problem is you can find intolerance in every religion, including in Islam. But the reason Islam is such a focus today is because it is the banner of a political movement, and that's where we need to put the finger on. Anjam Chowdhury represents that political movement that actually, it's not a question of, oh, he's an intolerant man, we can just ignore him. The problem is that this movement makes laws, it actually stones people to death in the 21st century, it hangs 16-year-olds for acts incompatible with chastity, it denies women the right to divorce, to child custody, it imposes sexual apartheid on millions of people. We have to make a distinction between
So it's not to do
Muslims.
with Islam, it's to do with people like him.
It is, it's the political Islamic movement, and actually the first victims and the first front of resistance against this movement are people who are either Muslims or being labelled as such. So here's the problem.
That's really sad, isn't it? Maryam highlights a deep misunderstanding about Islam and the broader issues at play. While it's true that intolerance exists in all religions, focusing solely on Islam overlooks the political dimensions intertwined with these beliefs. The political movement associated with figures like Anjam Chowdhury distorts the core teachings of Islam and exploits them for power. It's crucial to recognize that many Muslims are at the forefront of resisting this political Islam. They often face persecution and violence themselves for advocating for reform and human rights. By understanding the distinction between religion and the radical political movements that misrepresent it, we can foster more productive conversations about tolerance, justice, and freedom for everyone. But before we got to this, the moderator asked a radical Muslim,
How can you say that this is a tolerant religion?
This radical religious man responded,
Well, I think that one needs to appreciate that the word Islam is derived from the root word istislam, which means submission. Therefore, the Muslim is the one who submits entirely to the Sharia, the divine law of God. Hence, toleration is something which is, if you like, defined by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, God. Therefore, if something is in accordance with the Sharia, we tolerate it. If it is outside of the Sharia, we cannot tolerate it. Hence, for example, Islam will tolerate non-Muslims to live among the Muslims within the Sharia under an Islamic state. Their life, wealth, their honor, their dignity will be protected. They will get the basic needs of food, clothing and shelter. But at the end of the day, we cannot tolerate adultery, fornication, we cannot tolerate apostasy, not because this is from our own whims and desires, but this is enshrined within the Quran and the Sunnah of the Messenger Muhammad.
It is so certain that most religious folk do not know much about their faith, so it is so important to make assertions and claims based on proven facts.
Sorry, Anjam. First of all, your Arabic was wrong. The root word for Islam is not istislam, it's salima. I assume you don't speak Arabic.
Correct.
Secondly, it's not in the Quran that you have to stone to death. That's also wrong. I don't know where you learned Islam from, Anjam.
Back to Douglas.
Absolutely, and the younger they go in this country at the moment, the more likely they are to be radical. This is the problem, and the previous speaker was absolutely right about this, that the politicized version of Islam is the real problem at the moment. Most faiths take a long time to sort of work themselves out, to be interpreted, for people to drop verses that aren't any good. Christianity and Judaism, many centuries ago, got through this process of dropping the wicked and the violent verses. Islam has to do that now.
Douglas points out the crucial issue of youth radicalization, a challenge that cannot be overlooked. We need to tackle and rethink these faith issues to encourage peace and understanding. This change can help reduce radicalization and promote harmony in society. We remember the event in 2017. Mashal Khan, a Pakistani university student, was brutally lynched on campus after being falsely accused of blasphemy and fell victim to a politically charged version of Islam. His progressive views clashed with extremist ideologies, leading to his tragic death. This event underscores the dangers of politicizing religion and the need for reform and enlightened understanding of the faith.
There is great intolerance in many religions and in many religious books, Father.
That's a good question from the host. The priest responded,
Yes, and I was interested in what Douglas was saying. earlier, and I agree with him entirely, that the problem, and with our friend over here, is with the politicisation of religion. There are incidents in our Christian history of which we are ashamed, and which, for example, you talked about the Crusades and Urban starting them. Well, John Paul II spoke at length about that and our sorrow for that. It was a product of its age, and there are various reasons why you can come up with why they happened. We talked about different eras, but the politicisation of a religion is very dangerous. So, for example, I'm a Catholic, but I did not support anything that happened in the name of the Catholic Church in Northern Ireland, for example. It brought shame on my religion, of which I hold very dearly. And it's when people take it to an extreme and do things in the name of that religion which bears nothing, no resemblance to what I follow and have given my life to.
Let me refresh your memory on what happened in Northern Ireland. The Troubles in Northern Ireland that lasted 1960s to 1998 were a violent conflict between Protestant Unionists, who wanted to stay in the UK, and Catholic nationalists, who sought unification with Ireland. The violence resulted over 3,500 deaths and caused deep community divisions. You could see the actions taken by some in the name of religion during this conflict were deplorable. It's a stark example of how religion can be twisted to justify violence and hatred. Such acts are contrary to the teachings of Christianity, which emphasize love, forgiveness, and peace. It's shocking to see faith, which should promote compassion, used for division and violence. We must work to prevent this perversion, ensuring religion remains a source of unity and hope. Now, pay attention as the moderator asks another question.
Do you think it's, in any religion, it's the empty vessels who make the most noise that cause the most harm when it comes to the image of that particular religion?
Damn, one of Douglas's panelists has to say,
I think religion as at extremes is actually it's anti-religion. I grew up as a Methodist. And now I'm not sure I have faith. I'm somewhere between an agnostic and an atheist. I'm not really sure where I am. But for me, it's about living a good life. And I know many people who go to church on a Sunday and would call themselves Christians or would say they have a faith, but then don't live the rest of their life like that. And I find that much more upsetting than, you know, it's about how you show yourself, and it's being a good person. It's people who screw up everything in this world. The world's a great place, but it's people who damage it.
Douglas Murray?
And if I can say so, I mean...
The practice of one's belief system is so important. I strongly believe that you people should stand by what they think without contradicting themselves with another practice. We certainly have many religious people who practice what they preach differently. Now, pay attention, as Douglas makes a remarkable point.
I couldn't agree with that more. The great achievement of Western European civilization in the last few hundred years, the Enlightenment, the ability to not have rules based on people pointing to a verse in a holy book that you may not think is a holy book and saying you have to live your life by the law because of this verse. We've managed to get away from that, and as the gentleman in the front row here has shown, it's very important that Islam also gets away from that. If that happens, it can be a guide to your life, but not the legal nightmare which people like Mr. Chowdhury would have us live in.
Islam could greatly benefit from adopting Douglas's view of religion as a personal ethical guide rather than a strict legal system. The emphasis shows the importance of laws based on reason and evidence, rather than strict religious texts, has made Western European societies more just and inclusive. Adopting this approach could enhance individual freedoms in Islam, reduce rigid legalism, and foster progress while preserving spiritual values for a more harmonious society. Now, let's hear your thoughts on this and the many other side topics raised in this debate. Is Islam really a religion that gives voice to an individual, or with the motive to silence another? Do you agree that religion can be practiced without a rigid legal framework? Is this a political movement, and what are they aiming at? Also, hit the like button and subscribe to our channel for more interesting debates. Now, you can also become one of our partners by joining the membership platform. See you in our next video.